I decided to ask Google what states have the worst prisons. That's right. In today's video, we're going to ask Google what states have the worst prisons in the United States of America. And whatever comes up on the screen, that's exactly what we're going to discuss on today's video of The Pen and the Shank, the most unusual and unique crime and prison channel experience on YouTube. Man, let's jump straight into the question. What states have the worst prisons? I'm a slow typer, so y'all bear with me. What states have the worst prisons? Oop, I spelled worse wrong on accident, so calm down. All right, what states have the worst prison? Here's Google. I'm going to show you what popped up. All right, as you can see at the top, I typed in what states have the worst prisons, and there is the AI overview. I'm just showing it to you right here that Alabama and Louisiana are the first two that popped up, and we're going to discuss it on today's video. All right, now that we know that I typed in what states have the worst prisons, we're going to talk about exactly what's on this thing. I'm going to discuss it. I'm going to read it. Then I'm going to readjust, and we're going to have a long discussion about these state prisons and what ones are the worst and what makes them the worst and my personal experience, because I happen to be in one of the states that they consider the worst prisons. Here we go. Let's get into it. Based on an AI overview of the question, what states have the worst prisons, the thing that pops up is, based on high rates of violence, overcrowding, and poor conditions, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Oklahoma are frequently cited as having the worst state prison systems. Alabama is known for extreme violence, while Louisiana and Mississippi have the highest incarceration and death rates. Alabama, often cited for having the most dangerous violent prisons, that is Holman Correctional Facility in the U.S., with Department of Justice investigations finding widespread unconstitutional and deteriorating conditions. We're going to talk about these prisons. First, I'm going to read what AI had to say. Louisiana ranks number one for the highest incarceration rate, 776 people per 100,000 residents, and has high death rates within facilities, particularly Angola. Mississippi faces intense scrutiny for dangerous, understaffed, and overcrowded facilities that have led to high inmate death rises. Oklahoma consistently ranks among the highest in the nation for per capita incarceration rates. Other troubled systems are Arizona, California, and Kentucky are noted for having systematic issues regarding overcrowding, inadequate care, and violent conditions. Specific notorious facilities beyond state systems, individual prisons such as Rikers Island in New York, Attica in New York, Folsom in California, Red Onion in Virginia are frequently highlighted for severe conditions. So that was the first thing. I just read everything. Now, the next thing I would have to do is click on deep dive into an AI mode, which I'm not going to do. So as you've seen, AI answered my question, and that's what we're going to talk about today. As you know, the prison genre is really big now. It's bigger than it's ever been. There's a highlighted interest for people who are in society, who never been to prison, to want to know exactly what's going on in prison, or what happens in prison, or what happened in prison. Therefore, the prison genre on YouTube and the prison genre altogether on social media has exploded over the last 5-10 years, and it's really starting to take off even more with the possession of cell phones inside correctional facilities, where inmates are getting videos and small clips of what's going on inside of the prisons, and they're putting it on social media. Make no mistake about it, the correctional facilities do not want video clips of their prison getting to society in the free world. They don't want you seeing no kind of clips of what they have on a prison. One, it shows that they don't have no control of the prison because the inmates have cell phones. Two, it can reveal harsh conditions that they don't want you to know about because they don't want to change the harsh conditions. Or three, you know what I mean? It's just contraband. The inmates aren't supposed to have it, and they feel like they're shaking them down, and they're not catching them and doing their job as correctional staff. Correctional staff is probably, if I had to put a list together of the top 10 most underpaid jobs in the United States of America, correctional officers is probably on the top 10. That job should pay people fair wages and decent wages, and they should have an opportunity to move up the ladder and make some good money. Think about who they're overseeing and watching and what exactly consist of their day-to-day tasks. They're watching inmates to keep them from getting back out in society and harming and hurting one another. Ain't no easy task. It's a violent place with violent conditions, paying these dudes cheap money. So I asked Google, what states have the worst prisons? And as you can see, I showed it to you. We're going to talk about it. The only thing I'm going to discuss per the robot from AI that answered this question is the 6 bullet points that it gave and the initial answer to the question that I asked. That's all I'm going to cover from the AI perspective. I got it right here so I can reference it as we go along, and we'll cover each of the 6 bullet points. But hear me out when I say this. AI bases its information on questions that you ask Google on information that's provided from reality. It takes the information that's out there from statistics, from opinions, from op-eds, whatever, and it compiles it to give a question that's most relevant. Give an answer to the question that's most relevant that you are asking on Google. And I decided to do it today. And the reason I decided to do that today is because recently I've had some comments on my channel where people are saying stuff like, oh man, you don't know what you're talking about. People ain't getting graped no more. You know what I mean? That used to happen back in the 50s. Okay, you ain't been to the South. So that's why we're going to cover this thing. And we're going to start off with the first bullet point, Alabama. Often cited for having the most dangerous violent prisons. Anybody who has seen videos of the Alabama prison system cannot argue that the first thing that you're thinking about is, I do never want to go visit Alabama. I never want to go to Alabama because of off chance that I go to jail in Alabama, man, I'm done. Them dudes are literally still taking booties in Alabama. In 2026, if you go to Alabama and you ain't got no connections and you can't fight and you ain't willing to go straight savage mode, you gonna get your booty taken in Alabama. They got videos. I saw one dude, he's huddled up with his little punk and he's punching him in the face. Y'all probably saw the video. Little white dude, boom. I'm saying little white dude, he looked like he was in his 30s, still getting slapped like a punk. And I'm thinking to myself, dang, he got a big old black dude on him, just huddled up with him. They got all kind of clips with dudes with their punks. And so dudes are telling me, oh, you don't know what you're talking. Then they say stuff like, we're going to get to Louisiana. So they don't know what they're talking about. Ask them poor dudes in Alabama who getting their booty taken if it's still happening in 2026. Just because it ain't happening on the West Coast don't mean it ain't happening in other states. The South don't operate on the same political structure of the West Coast. Just does not happen. You don't tell no man what to do. In the West Coast, as soon as you touch down in the dorm, the political structure of your race is going to tell you what to do and you're going to listen. Man, good luck with that in Louisiana or Alabama. They're not going to listen to that. They don't play those games. Every man for himself. It's literally the Wild Wild West. So, here's something else I would say. I would even go to say, and I'm from Louisiana, and I'll say this. There's bad prisons in every state, y'all. Make no mistake. You don't want to go to jail in any state, but some states don't have as bad prisons as other states. There are some states where you could probably go do your time, and overall, most of the prisons and jails in that state, you are going to be okay doing your time there. You can still do your time peacefully, get out and be rehabilitated. In the South, that's hard. They do have facilities that are more settled than others, but by and large, the facilities in the South are all dangerous. The Department of Justice has investigated personally and continues to investigate the Alabama prison system. It's the only prison system that I would personally say, and I'm from Louisiana, that I think is worse than Louisiana. It's the only one. I wouldn't put any other prison state system in the category of being worse than Louisiana, except Alabama. Now, there are others that I think are, almost right there with Louisiana, but I think it's Alabama and Louisiana, Mississippi. I can agree with that order from AI on the worst prisons. All right. So the next bullet point is Louisiana. It says it ranks number 1 for the highest incarceration rate, 776 people per 100,000 residents, and has high death rates within facilities, particularly Angola. I say that all the time. It's not uncommon. You could be from the right side of the tracks. You can be from a predominantly good area, affluent area, with mansions, and you probably still know somebody who went to prison on dope charges, robbery charges, getting involved with the wrong thing. Because in Louisiana, the hood is 1 block away from the mansions in New Orleans. It ain't far. You can go from Holly Grove you know what I mean, to $1 million house, and you know what I mean, by walking 5 minutes, 10 minutes, depending on what part of Holly Grove you in. You can cross over into Uptown. Listen, y'all, in Louisiana, you're going to know somebody who went to prison. I can go to any store, walk around anywhere, and I see somebody I know who went to prison, who was involved in that lifestyle. They're going to lock you up in Louisiana. You going to jail, jail, jail. You get caught with something, them folks sending you to jail. They going to get their taxpayer money. They got to fill them jails, them private run facilities, and you're going to go to jail. And another thing that's really bad in Louisiana, people die in these prisons all the time. You don't even barely hear about it, because what they do is when them dudes die, they send them to the hospital, and the hospital does a check on them, and then they call the time of death at this time, and they just say they died at the hospital. Last year, at the end of last year, Hunt Correctional Center in Louisiana, which is one of the reception centers, or the main reception center in Louisiana. That's where, no matter where you're going to, if you're going to Angola, Wade, or to some parish prison, Hunt was the main hub on you had to go through to go anywhere else. In Hunt Correctional Center, 16 deaths at the end of the year. 16! Unaliving, overdoses, and juggins. 16 at the end of the year. That ain't counting the rest of the year at Hunt Correctional Center. It's going off. It's so bad, they had to start a new cemetery. The only cemetery used to be in Angola, Point Lookout. But now they done started a new cemetery in Hunt, because dudes is dying at a higher rate in Louisiana. You will die, man. I recently had to talk to a partner of mine. He just got out a couple months ago. He said, you know, back when I was in the 90s and the early 2000s, when I was in prison, it was wild. It was rough. He said in Louisiana, where we at, he said they done took it to the next level. He went into a dormitory, and beside himself, there was only 2 other white dudes. He said he sat down, he's chilling. Now he's a convict. He done time already. You know, he knows a lot of people from the street. He knows about his business. And he's sitting down, and he said he's sitting on his bunk, and the 2 white dudes he seen both sat down to pee. They were punks right off the bat. You know what I mean? With a dome, it had about 100 dudes in it, and only 3 were white, and 2 were punks. You know what I mean? And so that's the reality. Dudes will still take your booty. So dudes try to get on the line and type against me. You don't know what you're talking about, man. It doesn't happen like that. All right, come do time in Louisiana and tell me how it happens when them dudes take your booty. They don't care about no political structure, man. They don't obey that stuff down here. Don't go in Orleans Parish or East Baton Rouge Parish or Shreveport. In them parish jails, shoot, you be begging to get out of there. All right, unless you from one of them hoods, you know? All right, the next bullet point, Mississippi faces intense scrutiny for dangerous, understaffed, and overcrowded facilities that have led to high inmate death rates. What else can you say? Mississippi. That says everything you need to say. I personally know people who done time in Mississippi. Parchment Prison, man. You know, one of the few political prison affiliated organizations that originated between Angola Prison and Parchment Prison in Mississippi, the Dixie Mafia. And it ain't like, you know, the West Coast, you know, whites. It ain't political like that. This was more political to the point to where it was legitimately political, connected to real politicians who knew people who went to prison that they were paying to pull hits. And it's real, because I know people back in the 90s and the 80s who were caught up in some of those hits. It's some wild stuff, y'all. You know what I mean? So Mississippi has deep roots of corruption. And you don't want to go to no prison in Mississippi. Mississippi will get your mind right, man. It's a bad prison system in Mississippi, man. You know, and listen, one thing about Alabama, Louisiana, and Mississippi, it's the good old boy system. You don't, man, these folks will whoop you, man. I'll tell you a video, man. And worse than the prisons is the paid for private run facilities, the parish jails that house state inmates who are doing, you know what I mean, large amounts of time. They literally housing in warehouses, parish jails where dudes don't have no way to rehabilitate themselves. You're stuck in the dorm for sometimes weeks on end before you get out, other than going to get child. And you're festering in there, and it got dudes who are doing large sentences, like 25 plus years, all festering in these dorms, and they want to get up the road. Everybody wants to go to Angola because that's where your opportunities are. If they can't go to Angola, they want to go to Hunt. They want to go to Wade. They want to go to DCI, WCI, Rayburn 60s, what they call it. They want to go to one of those prisons, Allen, Cottonport. They don't want to be stuck in these paid for parish jails where you can't do nothing. And it's wild up in there. But I'm trying to tell you, dude had gold teeth. Correctional officer went in there, knocked out his gold teeth, took his gold teeth, sold them at the pawn shop, and told the dude, yep, I took my boo out on a date. Sold all them golds you had, boy. Dude couldn't do nothing. That's what's happening in Louisiana. They ain't happening nowhere else. They knocking your golds out your mouth. Dude, man, I've seen this. I've been in the dorm, and I'm going to tell a story about this jail. I was the most scared I ever been in my life in this paid for parish prison. The warden looked in my face and let me know basically I was one step away from getting gone. And my heart was just pounding. This is the same place where I seen him knock a dude's gold out. Now this whole grill took a gold. They swept that up and took it. I seen that with my own eyes in the dorm. I seen another dude told me, man, he said, the only reason I'm acting right, I know they're going to try to get my golds out of my mouth. That's how dangerous it is. These guards in Louisiana, they don't care, man. They get with you. They don't care. Listen, this ain't run like no California. Y'all got liberal people running your states and they feel sorry for you and they're letting you out with multiple bodies. They ain't happening here, man. You can send that stuff up the road somewhere else, you know? And so it's just rough, man, in the South, man. Doing time is different. You can still get your booty taken in the South. I don't know about nowhere else. Oklahoma, next bullet point, consistently ranks among the highest in the nation for per capita incarceration rates. Kind of the same as Louisiana and Mississippi. You know somebody in Oklahoma who went to prison. It's got a high, per capita rate. The next bullet point, other trouble spots are included. Arizona, California, and Kentucky are noted for having systematic issues regarding overcrowding, inadequate care, and violent conditions. We know that California, the gangs are kicking off at any moment. Everybody knows that. All the movies that are based on prison gangs are coming out of California. We know that California has a reputation for prison gangs. The ABs, you know what I mean? The BG, the Black Guerrillas, the Mexicans, Southerns, and Northern Mexicans. That's all comes out of California. So all that stuff comes out of California. Nazi lowriders, we all know the stories. So that's where that comes from. And they make these movies based on those dudes. American Me, Blood In, Blood Out, Shot Caller, Felon, all based out of California prisons. So we know that the gang violence is bad, but there's a structure. You know what I mean? You're not just going to be able to, in the South, if you white, you're going to be the victim still. That ain't going to happen in California. Unless in the South and Louisiana, you got your rounds and you already been to prison and dudes know you already a convict. You can handle your business. It don't have to happen, but you got to stand on your own 2 feet. You have to fight. It's mandatory. You must fight. If you don't fight, if they can't physically take it from you, they're going to talk you out of it mentally, and they don't never stop. Man, and then it says Arizona, from what I understand, and listen, y'all share in the comments, I don't know everything about West Coast prisons. I only know about what I hear other people tell me, and I personally met a few people from California prisons. And I don't think I've ever met anybody from Arizona prison, but they all share, from what I understand, Arizona's pretty much like California. It's run on a race structure, a political structure. And so the gangs are there the same way. Kentucky is probably just like the South, the good old boy system. The next bullet point, specific notorious facilities. Beyond state systems, individual prisons such as Rikers Island in New York, Attica in New York, that's another one. You see a lot of movies on the old mafioso members, or you see a lot of the documentaries are based in Rikers Island and Attica. So Attica, one of the biggest prison riots ever, happened in Attica prison. So there's been movies made on it. So there's history there. Those are some violent prisons and dudes all coming from the 5 boroughs, and it's rough up in those prisons. Folsom, California, that's where the movies happen. That's what they're based off of. That's why these gangs got started. Red Onion in Virginia. I've heard some stories on Red Onion in Virginia. Virginia is a wild place. The difference, I think, and I could be wrong on this, the whites in the South, and Virginia is considered the South, but it kind of gets further up north. The deep South, the whites can still handle their business. Listen, it ain't uncommon for whites. Whites in Louisiana always get accused of trying to be black, and they're not trying to be black. I know a lot of white dudes, they just grew up like that, man. They got gold teeth. They speak, with a lot of slang, and they're really not trying to be black. That's the environment they grew up in. But I get accused of it, and I'm probably one of the better speaking, people who've been to prison who's white. I have a friend of mine. He done time in California. He speaks better than me, and they accused him of trying to be black in California. I hope to get him on my channel because he got some interesting stories. But so that's the issues that you have inside the prisons. And this is what, Google AI response was. And I think that most people, because I did a poll a while back, what prisons do you think are the worst? And this is over a year ago, probably a year and a half ago. My channel was much smaller. I asked the question, what prison systems do you think were the worst? I said West Coast, East Coast, Southern, or Feds. And the majority of the people said Southern. So, and that's not counting Texas. Texas is like a hodgepodge of the South and the West Coast. It's kind of strange because they do have racial gangs in Texas and they do have gangs in Texas, but it's not as in my opinion, from the information that I've perceived and listened to and heard and talked to people and read, it's not as structured as the West Coast. But prison, and then it's like the South. It's like Louisiana. Texas has field labor. That's a whole nother thing. Unless you've done field labor, you don't know about field labor. Try picking cotton and sweet potatoes and peas that you're going to eat. You know what I mean? Or they're going to use to sell to somebody else. Try shoveling manure all day long in the field with a dude with a gun watching you, ready to blast you. Old school hymns. That stuff really going on in the South. That don't go on nowhere else. It's some real stuff, man. So in my opinion, I think Google, and listen, I don't go around answering Google questions all the time, but I thought this would be interesting. I think they mostly got it right. And I think most people would agree that the Southern prisons are the worst prisons. But share in the comments. You don't have to agree with me. We can agree to disagree. What prison system do you think is the worst and why? Have you served time in those prisons? Share in the comments. And thanks for watching A Pen and a Shank, the most unusual and unique crime and prison channel experience. Let's get it.